Hi there, Randi Green here. Let us continue. And the question is then, okay, how is that going to affect our projects that we are creating here? I have just chosen to work with food, health, and environment to give some kind of container from where you have a broader understanding of whatever type of project that you are engaging in. We could say that whatever projects that we want to participate in or instigate or create on our own, they are affectable by the trinity structures, that is the sun, the planet, and our individual fields. I think that's very important to understand that we are not what we could say closed containers. We are not operating on our own merits as we thought or have been conditioned to think as part of the prohibiting technologies. There we kind of learned that our interior, the way we thought, the way we feel, what's going on in our body, is ours and ours alone. And here we're now understanding the alternate reality perception that we are not alone. We are not an island, and we do affect our surroundings. We are affected by our surroundings. So that also means that when we go out in the world and we're looking at things that we want to push into the world or want to create in the world, it has to be from the perspective of the highest good of the many. And we kind of know that as in, okay, then what are the highest good of the many? I've talked about that in the transition sciences as well as in the template sciences. The highest good of the many is not what you think is the highest good of the many, because just go through that line of thought. I talked about that in the Changemaker course material as well. Just go through that thought process where you begin to think about, okay, if I were to help, let's not do the third world countries as we call it in the old days. I can't remember what it's called today. It's called something else today that's a little bit nicer. They are pre-industrial or going into become industrial or information age, whatever. It doesn't really apply. These are just constructions as well that are part of institutions that are trying to put the Western world on top of the hierarchy of the most advanced worlds, and then everybody else is underdeveloped, right? So we could call it developing country. I think that's what they're calling it today, a developing country. But that's good to put that one in there as well, because aren't we all, as things are now, the whole understanding of reality that has changed, the reality that is changing due to the environmental issues, to the climate crisis, to the challenges we have, to the differences in the way that we perceive reality, the way that different nations perceive reality. I'm sorry if there is a little bit of background noise from the ventilator on my computer. It apparently decided that now it's time to make a lot of noise. I hope the background noise will weed it out. Otherwise, it is subsiding now. So let us get back to, we're calling developing countries. And that means that for me, we are all developing countries. Let's go down that path of information. We are all developing countries because of the climate change, because of the new obstacles, because of transferring from coal-based industrial complexes into sustainable renewable energy, politics, sustainable renewable types of technology, as well as running businesses differently. It's not for profit alone. It is now becoming more evident that we are working to produce what we could say a circulation of goods and services instead of just using and abusing and wasting. We are now trying to create what's called circular economy. Look it up on the internet, where we are not just used to abuse and to throw out, but we use to provide and to add on and give more value for whatever is being sold as a product. So that's technically very different. So we're having these subcurrents as well, and they will become more prominent in the future if the different groups that are here, for instance, the POMs and other races that are now lodging in and locking in to our reality field, because they have an interest in continuing the enclosure. So they will come up with solutions for that. They will come up with technologies. A lot of the sustainable renewable technology are under the insectoids, similar to the health industry that's under the insectoids. The new technology that are coming in and are going to play a role in the transition from what we call coal-based into sustainable energy technology, that is by androids and grays and other both the PUMs, but also other groups of hybrid kits and hybrid projects that are now coming up with new inventions. I just saw here in Denmark, we have an annual reward for young scientists, and the youngest one was 12 years old, coming up with some brilliant ideas. And the way that he was verbalizing things clearly, an old soul in a child's body, unfortunately a dark one. But it is what it is. So it's not saying that the ones that are now in form are all here to do ill. They're here to try and prolong by actively participating in the world in a manner that allows them to change and transition our world out of the what we call the scavenger coal, gasoline, oil-based industries, because that's under the scavengers. And why is that under the scavengers? Well, what is oil? Oil is the fossils, the residuals, the goo from old reptilians, old types of life forms, old types of bacteria, algae that were part of our planet when it did not have what we call oxygen, and when it did not have an environment where we could breathe. So the breathers, the breatharians, the microorganisms that allowed for that came later on. They are inserted. They're part of the I'm sorry, completely forgot the name. Mitochondria. Sorry, mitochondria. Sorry, look it up. You have got that little extra cell, that little powerhouse within the cellular structure that is part of the core of the cell. Look that up. Look up how a cell is constructed, and look up when did we create sorry, I have all of this in Danish. That's a course I did in Danish. This is important to look up. Look up, when did our planet get oxygenated? When did life forms begin to breathe on our planet? And you will see it began with the mitochondria, with the smaller microbial, the smaller encyclopedias or whatever they're. Sorry, this is again Danish words, and that I should have listened to it in English, because then I would have the right English words for it. Colliding there, but that can be found in different levels of our planet in the soil, where you can see the shells and the remains of these early life forms that began breathing, and by that creating what we call an environment from where they were no longer just living in mud and in the soil, and were not in need of any air, but were technically absorbing the energies of the environment via their little one-celled body structures, and becoming into multiple cell structures that allowed them both to have a physical form technically, but also have what we call the respiratory system. And that allowed for a different brain structure, because then we have the blood and we have the air that goes together, and we have the cells that are in a form that is fueled by blood integration of energies from the blood that are then being fueled by air, and leading to the red blood cells and onward and so forth, creating a heart. And if we go with the ideas of science of how this has come to be, I would not say it's completely far-fetched. There is definitely developmental processes from cellular structure into actual organic forms that were grown here, but not in the time period that science dates it back into. These are just the premature cell houses and transformer houses under the Pleiadian projects, where we could say, what is oxygen? Oxygen is a kind of gas that is in the air that transforms a specific type of energy into another type of energy, from oxygen to carbon, right? So that's what we're doing every day when we're breathing. We are carbonizing our environment. And the question is, did that happen? Was that in play before the Dracos took over, or did the Dracos take over and change our environment so that they could exist here from being what we could call a different type of environment into an environment from an oxygenated one, where we could say the helium breathers were present, the helium hydrogen that were connected to the solar energy, the prana, and changed into creating a body, a vessel that would then produce carbon dioxide, which would then pollute our environment, create the greenhouse effect, and by that create a lid on top of our environment called the ozone layer, and onward and so forth from where they could exist here. So we are having different types of life forms that are existing with different types of gases that allows the physicality to function. We are absorbing what we call the nutritious energies from our surroundings, and they be either what we call fixed or liquid or gaseous, right? You look that up as well on the internet. These are general sciences. You can look it all up and see how you can perceive the physical form from that aspect of a different type of energetic composition. So we also understand that our environment is engineered or terraformed to contain the different life forms here. Not only the apins and their technology, but also the different types of organic vessels that allows the different groups or factions to connect to our physical form. So that's important. So when we talk about breathing techniques, there are actually, when we work with the chakra system within the Brahim teaching system, there is the pranayama, the way to lift the energies of the lower chakras to the higher chakras by specific breathing techniques. I will not recommend that because if you're not aware of clearing your three lower fields, the three lower chakras, then you will lift the energies up to your heart field and completely pollute it and contaminate it and create an artificial kundalini awakening that you do not want. That's the distortion energies, underworld energies, and that will take over your spine and your brain and connect it to some of the black cobras that are in some of the layers of the underworld. So not a way to go around that one. So just to put that in context as well, when we talk about connecting to the reality network, this is not something you can do deliberately. This happens naturally as you activate your timeline resonance field that is connected to your heart field. Again, when it is fueled with loving kindness, you will activate the original grids. When it's fueled with hatred and disorder and disconnect, and the 7Ds, you will connect to the dark grids. So please do not try to activate the root chakra, root vortex connection to the reality grids or the racial grids before you are in complete control of what you're doing. So the holographic network is technically connected from the biofield and the mental field. So that's all about the way we think about processes. And that's where it comes in when we think about our projects. How are we going to do our projects? Are we going to do projects that are in alignment with what we think from a human level? Then we connect to the enclosure networks and distortion fields and collective fields of humanity as it is now. Or are we working with density energies and higher order technology? And then we need to figure out, okay, which type of technology are we then interacting with? And here the law of participation kicks in. For instance, the Greys have been trying to get me on board of their projects, which demanded that I was an engineer. And I have later on discovered I actually do have students that are technically engineers that could have built this, that could have worked as a team to make it happen. I just didn't know it at the time, which were probably good the same. Because if we had begun that project together, we would have aligned ourselves with that type of Greys, and they would then have got access to us because we had traded via the exchange rate of information and energy, giving us solutions. And by that, we began working what they had offered, and that's a trade. You know, the old Roman law of the scavengers and the colonizing races, the insectoids, the androids. He who wants to be fooled, let him be fooled. So never take a gift, because a gift always has something with it. You don't get anything for free in this world. Just be mindful of that when whatever you wake up with some grand ideas of, this is the project I want to instigate. Then you sit in contemplation and energy work and look, what does it tie into? Which faction is behind? What are they offering? What is this idea about? And what are you going to do with it? Is it in alignment with the original Pillar Project ideas? And you'll say, I don't know. I don't know what the original Pillar Project ideas are. Exactly. So until you know that, by your heart and from yourself and the holographic teaching system, once you begin to look into the idea and begin to put it into motion, then you will begin to see where it comes from. Another good example or an idea or a good way to go around this is sometimes I wake up with brilliant ideas and I'm so absorbed into it because I've been modified during nighttime when I was sleeping. So I'm completely locked into the pattern of change and the whole code system and everything that the grace have put into me. And I wake up and think, oh, I need to do this and that and whatever. And then I begin working with it. And I could, because I'm so efficient, I could change the whole world in one day. Sometimes I actually kind of wake up, take down my websites and everything and just shut it down, what have you. And then I just sit on my hands and say, no. And then I write it down on a piece of paper, write all the details down, or I make a podcast, which I later delete, but I use it I verbalize it and I write it down. And then I'll wait until the next day. And the next day, interestingly enough, I can barely remember what I wanted to do, what it was or whatever. I look at what I wrote down and think, that's odd. And of course, there could be two reasons here. Either I've been pushed into a different timeline that takes me away from the project, or it was an inserted project that was not really in alignment with my original energy system. Because this is where we go when we talk about projects. We need to know our original energy system so we're in alignment with who and what we are. Otherwise, we will create distortion when we embark on our projects. Again, sorry about this whole clearing out my throat. You know how it goes. All of these distortion energies. So we must be in alignment with our original energy system when we engage on our projects. If we are in alignment with our original energy system, then the project that we instigate on becomes a progression project. It becomes a project where we can say, well, this actually helps us. This actually goes in and supports our energy work. It goes in and supports our activation process. It goes in and activates the new grand cycle dynamics of activation and cleanup. And then we take the activation and the cleanup and turn it into a project that will then prosper inside this reality, supporting the highest good of the many. So in essence, we say, what is the highest good of the many when we progress? When whatever we create transforms energy into a higher energetic state of what it was prior. When it clears out distortion. When it leads to a higher functionality of our energy system. And you can say, how do I know that? Well, me here coughing and having all sorts of weird stuff that comes out of my lungs and my throat because of all of this pollution that we have, which nobody's telling us about. But clearly, there's a lot of going on with the breathing, since that's part of the terraforming. That's what's been dropped from the chemtrails in the sky. Affects our lungs. It affects the aerosols. It's aerosols that affects the air. It changes the gaseous state of oxygen into something dissimilar that connects to the 0 point field neutron level of our cellular structure that affects the neutrons. That's part of the pumps and what have you. So all of that goes in, of course, and affects our central nervous system, our peripheral nervous system, the blood, the cells, our breathing system. That's why I took it up. And that's why when I'm here talking, going up in energy, I'm coughing, I'm clearing these distortions out. My body's releasing this as I talk about this on a higher level. And I could actually recommend you to try and you can use your computer, your iPhone, and then do a recording, verbalize, record it, speak it out loud, try to explain what you want to do, not just what you have in your head and think, oh, that's so brilliant, but actually write it down and then record it as if you were to explain it for someone else. And then listen afterwards and listen to what you have to say and observe what happens to you when you're trying to explain it. As I get all sorts, then I get hot and then I clear out the distortion energies. Then I begin to sweat extensively. And no, it's not just because I'm in my 50s. This is connected to astral energy. Whenever I'm around astral energies, my hothouse kicks in. It begins to burn off this energy. It literally, when I look at my energy system, it turns into a flame system. The reason why that happens is because the next stages of the vibrational field is that it turns into the plasma field, where it literally becomes this burning plasma field that circulates and begins to burn off distortion. That is only possible when you have activated the true perception field and the true radiation energies, because that radiation energy that goes in and affects the vibrational field changes it into the plasma field. And that plasma field only kicks in when there are transformative processes that are necessary. It can also kick into a code system building field, and it can also change into the devastator field if need be. But when we talk about the ideas and how they connect to the biofield is connected to the racial grids. So when we talk about the processes of the mind that are connected to the biofield, that are connected to the racial grids and our original potentials and emplacement in the Pillar Project. That's why the original races tried to emplace us into the original projects, the original level in 2020, until they discovered that was not possible, and then they pulled out the upper level of the templates. So with that, just leaving us with what we have integrated into our energy system, that is the work template. Because we have the work template and we have the in storage template. And you remember from the transformative course material, the transition sciences, that we were to integrate via the transformation of the energy units in our energy system, getting rid of the effects of the timeline event. We could expand our energy system into being 6-layered. And as we work with these different 6-layered dynamics, we would be able to integrate more of our, what we call in consciousness units from our work template. This is the new distinction I'm making here, so you understand what you're talking about. And as you had integrated what's from your work template, that's your capacities and your abilities, and the holographic teaching system that aligns with your energy system, telling you this is the right way to go around things. This is how you work in alignment with your original purpose and function. Then once that would master, then we would go in and begin to integrate what was from the library and what we had, the template units that were stored there as part of it's not connected to the original vessel because that's in stasis, but there was this sphere of original consciousness units that were above the vessel in stasis, run by cube technology and different forms of sustaining energies that allowed the vessel to be in stasis for a longer period of time. And that type of consciousness units from that sphere in the 6th dimension, we will then begin to integrate into this physical form. And as we did so, then the code systems that were in the body in stasis would begin to descend into this form that you had here, not the hijacker vessel, but the original LPU project. And from that, transfer everything that was in stasis and then recalibrate and reconfigure our entire middle domain original vessel. Because all of these, the Pillar Project, were functional and functioned in the middle domain, never in the outer domain. The outer domains have always been for projects. So we are now in an artificial body, in the outer domain, in the devastation cycles, within a reality setting that was never meant to be something that would prolong to the extent that it has been, which is why everything is breaking down. So the main purpose of this one is when we look at our projects, and I'll repeat it again in this context, is to understand that whatever you engage on is not to repair this reality. The first and most important thing is that it is for the highest good of the many, that transforms energies of this reality. It transforms your energy system in the projects you engage on, that it aligns with your original purpose and function, that it unfolds and expresses your capacities. That's from your work memory, your work template, the already developed consciousness units you have in your template structure. Everything you do should be aligned with the idea of developing the deeper understanding and the processual mastery of your 6-layer transformative energy system. And all of that should begin to be integrated into the physical form with all of the counter forces, the polarity forces, and the regressives, and whatever energetic parasites and whatever stands in your way. all of that is part of your project too. So when we do business, and when we do progressive projects, whether they are NGOs or they're pro-profit or non-profit or hybrid profit or whatever terminology we would like to put in there, the purpose of our project should be that it transforms the energy of reality. And what does that mean? Well, technically, if you choose to do a dance institute and you work with people that are activating and aware of how to use the energies of the body, I'm here referring to the podcast I have on the Higher Order Density 1 Work Institute YouTube channel, where I talk with Alexandra Shuttle, and there go in and work with the way that the energies of the body work, the way that we originally transformed energies beyond or before the timeline event and onward and so forth, as part of transforming the energies of the middle domains, because that was in the middle domain. And why were we transforming energies of the middle domain? Remember, the LPU, the foundation of the LPU, was to upgrade the genetics and consciousness units of the three lineages that had not got to the level where they were ready to elevate into the next cycles of the original progressive universal structures and the movement that were already happening there, as I talk about in the social humanity and other places. And by that, we create the LPU using technology to elevate and push further and progress these different lineages that had not made it originally, which is why we are now seeing these lineages as part of the timeline event have turned into the inverted ones and the regressed ones, as well as the androids. And the inverted ones are technically and alongside with the androids, but the androids is what remains of the 3-9 pillar. Originally, the regressed ones are a part of the 4-10 pillar. And the inverted ones are part of the 3-9 and 1-7. So it crosses this one. It would be easy to say, oh, they belong to that one, they belong to that one. It's not that simple, but there are some things that matches there. The 3-5 configuration or the 1-5 configuration or the 2-8 configuration, all of these denotes what kind of systems they had organic vessels in, as well as what they had a developed of energy system and consciousness templates. And they were, of course, dissimilar to the ones we had after the timeline event, because there the original templates began to break down due to the timeline event in the 5th dimension, the serum workstations, and that ripple into the other reality fields around it. But that's not where I want to go here. It's just, again, so understand these levels of mastery with why we transform energy has had different purposes over the course of before time and after time. And we are now in time still, and time is an artificial construction made up by the prohibiting technologies that are tied to what science is, the way our planet orbits around the sun and how many days it takes to orbit the sun and how fast it orbits the sun, and the velocity and of the rotation of our planet, which actually is crazily 10,000 kilometers per second or something insanely, which again goes in and say we should be thrown off, right? And there they say, well, it's because of gravity, but gravity is a weak force and that doesn't tie us in. So the only thing that ties us in is the magnetic field. So what happens when the magnetic field is no longer there? Well, it's more complicated by that. But the magnetic field, the Schumann resonance, the ionosphere, the frequency fence are definitely part of the things that keeps us tied to this planet and makes us part of the planetary system. And by that, we're not feeling the rotation because we're rotating with the planet. So we are also circulating around in space with 10,000 kilometers per second, which makes you a little bit nauseous, right? That's a merry-go-round with high speed velocity for certain. Okay. So with that understanding, we are also saying, the alternate reality perception plays a pivotal role in different approach and a different mythology, where high order sensing, such as clairvoyance, telepathy, interdimensional communication, play an important role in the different ways of working with the execution and management of the project. And I'm here reading the text material that is offered for free on the website, but link has also been put here into the the course material here on Vimeo. So, point being, in all of this, no simple solutions, but a lot of good insights into how do we do this and why are the insights important? Because they create a frame of reference. They create a frame of reference for a project. And for me, when I began this project years ago, what put me in motion? As of course, I had all of these, not feeling that this world belonged to me, so to speak. Not that you can say which does it belong to anyone, but I didn't belong to this world. I wasn't part of this world. And in a way, I understood after a long time of trying to fit in and understanding I couldn't fit in. Then I began to say, okay, clearly there's something else going on here. So what is it that makes me dissimilar? So I began my own personal process first. And that's part of the projects and the business projects that we engage on. We need to know who we are first. We need to understand how we work and how we put together and what's important for us. So the first important step is to say, okay, I have these capacities, I have these traits, I have these abilities. And there at the time I was literally just looking at, okay, I was a psychotherapist and I was good at understanding people and clearly had a different effect on people. And I was working at that time, I was also doing healing work and I had this whole insight, okay, whenever I work with people, something else happens, what normally is out there. With what others are working with, I am not working with. I'm seeing things from a different angle. And even the ones that are the top notch at the time, I wasn't even aligning or in coherence with that either. So I was just thinking, okay, there's something else going on. What is it? What is it then that I have to figure out? And then I asked myself, okay, looking at all of this and the way I'm working with things, the way I perceive things, clearly I have the ability to work with consciousness expansion. And then I asked myself, how can I create a project that leads to consciousness expansion in as many as possible? Because I knew I couldn't change the whole world, right? That would be nice, but a project is a project. It has its limitation and it has a target group and it will be for a certain amount of people. And I could also see that there were people out there that were looking for something that wasn't there already because I had the same experience. I had gone through the esoteric teachings, the biblical teachings, the politics, the sciences. I had studied from A to Z. I had plowed my way through an enormous amount of books to see, was it there? Was it there? Was it there? And I couldn't find anything. I looked on YouTube and it didn't resonate with me either. Glimpses, bits and pieces, but not the entirety of it. And then I came to that realization, well, that must be because my personal myth, as Carl Gustav Jung calls it, is different. It's dissimilar from the collective. It has alignments, it has connection points that are similar, but the 80% of it is so dissimilar that I need to investigate what that is. And as I began working with that and my chakra system and clearing that out, I discovered that things came naturally to me. I began going into past lives where I saw, okay, I worked with this before, so now it means to reintegrate what I already worked with, update it, upgrade it, figure out what is it today, and then begin to work with what does that then mean? How can I then put that into some kind of material that will expand the awareness of humans? And then I came into, okay, working with people and then discovering why are people not activating? I did the template readings, I had the sessions with them, I did the healing. Why are people not activating? It should not be that difficult. And then I asked the next question that led to the next project, and that was the one that took me to Australia, where I learned another level of reality, because Denmark is very, due to the old world order control of Europe, here in Denmark, there has been this choice of not using magic for centuries. Not that we are Christian or anything, actually we're Vikings, not really particularly Christian or anything. It's just been made that we were more focused on taking care of the weakest and trying to create a society where everyone would have a fair role, a fair play of actually surviving whatever was going on. And I think that grew out of some of the issues that we had in the 1700s with some of the factions that went to Australia and some of the factions that went to America that were very keen on using magic. And I think from the the councils, the brotherhoods that rules Europe, they decided, that's part of the old world order, they decided now was the time to shut down magic and the use of magic, because we already had, that leads to the possibility of the rising of the dark forces and the inverted forces and the contaminated grids and what have you. So instead it would be better to work on sciences and work on a different aspect of reality that will lead to the activation of the mental field, instead of focusing on the astral plane and the emotional field and the underworld energies and the biofield and the lesser developed levels of our reality that were aligning with what we could call the heart field and keeping that under control, which were part of the prohibiting technologies. I talked about that in the Souls of Humanity. For those of you who forgot that, go back and read how they controlled and have controlled the population on our planet within the different jurisdictions and different programs. Because that also ties into when we do progression projects, understanding the programs that have been run in our reality field and are still running. And some of the things that you see as science and are good projects that are based upon frequency technology, they are part of programs. And the question you must ask yourself, do you want to be part of these programs or do you want to create your own? And then what is your own? And that's where it comes in and must be an expression of your energy system and template. Your own project must be an expression of who you are, and not as in me, myself, I, to express myself or to get myself positioned or to get credit from others or admiration from others. This is not about service to self projects. This is not about you being lifted up on a pedestal because you're so damn good and so brilliant that you are having this project and that makes you so unique that everybody wants to adore you, what you call adore you and worship you and what have you. That's the complete not the way to go. It's not about you proving how good you are. It's not about you getting things out there and everybody will say, wow, you're so brilliant, and come and pat you on your shoulders and say, this is so good. No, the projects that you are going to make are the ones where you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I did this the way that it was supposed to be done. It's based upon honor. It's based upon the understanding of you have to do this because that's the right thing to do. It's not just about profit. It's not just about earning money. At the end of the day, it's more important that the project gets out as an ideology, as a thought system, as a process of ideas that others can connect to. Again, also understand that connects in a way to your mind field. And if there are distortions in your listeners and the ones that are using your material, it will come your way to begin with. Similarly, if you choose to work with the biofield, the emotional field, and goes into what we call psychosomatic connection with the body that ties into health, fitness or exercise or any forms that uses the body as the foundation, psychology, psychodynamics, healing, therapy, sessions, consulting, everything that goes with the emotional field, whatever people have there will come your way. And that's some of the hard-learned lessons I did in the beginning of 2014, 15, 16, and 17, and 18. I learned the hard way that whatever I sent out there would come back via feedback loops. Whatever I activated in people, because they were not using it the correct way, they were not able to clear it out, would then boomerang back into my energy system. And then I had to clear out what they couldn't clear out because I had used the new grand cycle dynamics of activation. And since they were not taking it, then I was the one that had to clear it up. So that's also important to understand that when we begin to work with people, we become responsible, quote unquote, for their energy systems. Not that we want to, not that it is our task, but because of the feedback loop or the boomerang effect that goes in and say, if you activate someone and that someone cannot work with it and cannot clear it up and cannot catch the ball, well, then it must circle back to you. Return to sender. And that's one of the things that the ones that use magic also learned the hard way. And that's what led to the fall of Atlantis. Because it is a reciprocity. It's principle 4. It's the cause and effect. What you send out there must come back and must be completed. And if it can't be completed, then the receiver, then it must boomerang back to you, and then you must complete it. And sometimes not always within the limited time span you thought of. And by that, you don't understand what hits you in the neck, what comes back and knocks you over, because you've long forgotten what you actually did. So for us that are working with energy, the biggest challenge is to always complete on the day when we can remember what we have done. To shut down, to clean out, and to make sure that whatever we have done will be cleared out completely before we go to bed, so we leave no unfinished business. And how are you going to run a project and a business doing that? Well, we're talking energies here. We're not talking about letting go of your customers and then taking down your projects and shut down your website every night and then build it up the next day. We're talking about energy cores. We're talking about patterns of change. We're talking about mastery, energy, and consciousness. We're talking about what we look at, we give energy. What we interfere with, we go into principle 2, and we have the balancing principle of being harmless. What we connect to, we look into, and what we look into, we give energy. That's principle 3. What we are will be reflected back to us. That's principle 4. What we know and how we use these energies will be is from principle 5. And then the correct partnerships only to work with the ones that are in alignment with the same ideas of doing these projects. But of course, not just saying, well, just because we mentally have studied the same material does not mean that people are ready for a correct partnership, because if their emotional field is distorted and connected to the underworld, their mental capacity can be as grand as it wants to be. But clearly, the rest of the system is connected to places that are detrimental to the progression project. They're trying to take it down. So it's not about brilliance. It's not about rational mind, yada, yada, parroting, as in kind of being a parrot, just being able to explain the material. It is just as much, has the heart field ignited? Is there timeline work involved? Are there resonance energies that are the resonance field? Is it operational? Does it go in and stir up energies? Can it stir up energies to clean them out itself? That's the rules of engagement. And that must come in play in our projects as well, which puts an enormous amount of limitation to what we can do and cannot do. And that's where we could say the internet right now has come to our assistance in a way. Now it's being AI'd and taken over by AI. So that's kind of being taken away again. But we had that possibility of going online and creating online courses that would in a way be harmless, energetically speaking. We would not have the direct contact with people. We would have what we call a subsidiary or a secondary contact with people via the material. It would be what we could call, similar to, as I talked about in the previous podcast, the trinity between you and the customer and your ideas. The thought forms would be the medium. And there used the original idea of the holographic teaching system, where we build trinity structures, right? So that's what I'm doing with my course material in the whole academy. That functions as a substitute for the holographic teaching system, creating frames of reference and energy points from where you can activate your energy system. And that's also a good thing to understand when we talk projects, that a project should be that medium from where you can interact with your consumer or the one that gets benefit from your project or benefit from your business, because you must think of, is this beneficial for the end receiver, the receiver of whatever I'm producing, the receiver of whatever project I'm putting out there, be it a podcast, be it a blog, be it whatever. Is it the end receiver? Is that person gaining something that leads to the optimal outcome for all involved? And what is the optimal outcome? Well, it depends on who the end receiver is. And it depends on what the end receiver needs. So this is also part of when we talk about projects. Okay, what does that then mean? How do we do these projects? And what are the the processes that we must instigate in before we just push our project or across the table and put it out there and say, this is my project, this is what I want to put out there. We are responsible for the outcome of our project. We are pushing energy into reality. Our project is a pattern of change. It is energy. It's built upon an architecture that is a thought form that is built from our energy system. It is a representation of our energy system. And that also means we must administer it. It's not just about producing a gadget and saying I'm a materialistic thing. You still, the architecture, the thought processes, the energy you put into are still tied to a physical form, which means you also must administer the project. It's not just about creating it and letting it go and then let it float on its own, because then it will be connected to whoever it's connected to, and then it will not hold the potentiality for the highest good of the many. It will stop being highly energized. It will go into distortion, and then the ones that are using it will then be distorted with it, and by that causing harm, and by that the boomerang effect will come back to you. So these are also some of the processes when we do energy work, and when we do energy work in our progression projects as well as in our whole business structures. These things we manifest in the world becomes an extension of our energy system. And as we are doing energy work in our own fields, so must we also do energy work with our projects and with our gadgets and with our products and with our business and whatever we are engaged in. Not other people, that's not ours to deal with, but what we have created as a medium for patterns of change, be it a business or a product or a service or goods or whatever it is, it must be under our control, and control I here mean the ability to work with it, transform it, administering it, and always lift it up to its highest potentials. So we know what we're dealing with, no matter what hits it, what is coming to it, what is being added to it, what is being done with it, from the users in the other end that are tapping into that pattern of change. So that's important in our projects, that we have that responsibility with us, because that's a responsibility rate that follows the highest standards and the highest good of the many. It's not just about production. It's not just about putting our mark on reality. It is about transforming energy through our products, our services, our goods, whatever we produce out there. It is an expression of our higher order type of existence that we must maintain and uphold and ensure that it always has the highest purity rate, the highest standards, and the highest progression rate, similar as we work in the same way with our own energy system. Thank you.